All right, and I will hand it over to Mark.
Thank you, Teresa. Hello, everybody. So, um, just a bit about me. I'm a Washington State licensed attorney. I have been practicing in this exact area of law for about 35 years, going on 36. Kind of getting harder and harder every year to admit that, but it's been about 36 years. I was in private practice for most of those years, but for the last 10 years, I've been running Ohana Fiduciary Corporation, and we're a professional fiduciary. And I'm going to tell you about what kinds of things you can expect from a professional fiduciary, what they do, what the roles are, how they work. I've got a list of questions here. What things should you know before you hire a professional fiduciary? What capabilities should they have? We'll talk a little bit about guardianships and conservatorships, pros and cons of hiring a family member or a friend versus a professional, which is better. A little bit about some of the organizations around the Seattle area that provide these kinds of services, what to watch out for, what to avoid, and how we typically work with the other professionals that are involved here. Feel free to interrupt and ask questions. You can throw stuff up into the chat if you know how to use it. If you do this, I'll probably say you with the hand raising, or I know I got your names in here, so I'll say yeah. So feel free, make it easy for yourselves. This is totally informal. I'm happy to be here. I do this kind of stuff all the time, and so what I'd like to start with is kind of what's a professional fiduciary? What does that mean? Um, so generally speaking, a professional fiduciary is someone who provides, well, fiduciary services. Uh, uh, so first we have to think about what is a fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person who acts on behalf of another and who owes that person a a high level of what we call level of duty to act solely in that person's best interest. So fiduciaries is to act solely in a person's best interest. You can contrast that with maybe sort of a contract. If I had a contract with somebody, so if I'm acting as your fiduciary. I mean, in some sense, this is kind of like a contract, but it's a fiduciary duty, which means I have to act in your best interest. If it was really a contract and not a fiduciary duty, I just have to act in good faith, right? So that's a lower threshold. So generally speaking, when you're thinking about working with someone who calls himself a fiduciary and who is legitimately a fiduciary, you should be able to rely that they will act solely in your best interest. There are 4 common fiduciary duties that are really associated with the topics that we're talking about, right? And those are, yes, Carol.
Is that a little bit different than being a proxy?
Yes, so that's a little bit different than being a proxy. You know, well, depends. So, proxy is a very broad term. You can be a healthcare proxy, that's a fiduciary duty. Or you can be a proxy who's authorized to vote in a corporation on behalf of another. That's a different kind of proxy, and that is not a fiduciary role.
Okay, I understand. It seems there's a lot of words that wind up being interchangeable and people think they mean the same thing.
Yeah, I encourage you to ask. That's right. And even worse, even more complicated, is there are a lot of words that people use that they really don't know what they mean. And they'll say that they're this or they'll say that they're that, but they're really not, you know. I encourage you to kind of dig a little bit. If someone says a word to you, well, tell me a little bit about what that means. When you're generally working with somebody who's providing these services that I'm talking about, you are under Washington law, you are dealing with a person who's providing a fiduciary duty. So even if they're acting one of these 4 fiduciary areas that I'm talking about, even if they don't think they're a fiduciary, they are. And in fact, a court of law will hold them to a fiduciary standard, regardless of whether they think they're a fiduciary or not. And that's important, an important concept to think about. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, because I've started thinking like when our HOA has an annual budget meeting, I can send in a proxy and somebody
Yeah,
can vote
that's
for
just
me
somebody
in
who's
the
going to
meeting.
vote, say, Carol approves. Now, presumably they're supposed to, you're giving them some authority because presumably you've told them you can approve on my behalf or not, but
Yeah, so there's kind of a little bit of a trust. I
yeah,
trust that you're going to be in line with my thinking.
yeah, what we're talking about today is different than that.
Yeah, I just had my estate done, and I think what you're talking about, what surprised me was when, are they the RCWs come in? Where you go, the state has said, this is what this person has to do, which
Yeah.
protects me.
Yeah, so the RCWs are the Washington state laws, statutory laws, and there are many of them govern what the rules around being a fiduciary. But there's also something called common law, which judges and have developed over centuries, which also govern fiduciary duties. So really, a fiduciary duty is more created under judge-made common law that's been around for 400 years. So there are 4 fiduciary duties. One is a personal representative, also known as an executor, though. So there's some fun little interchangeable terms. So a personal representative or an executor, their job is to administer your last will and testament. They're supposed to, if they're the executor of your last will and testament, their job is to do what that will says. That's their fiduciary duty, to do what that will says. A second fiduciary duty is someone we call an agent. An agent is someone who's appointed under a document called a durable power of attorney. And you can have a durable power of attorney for healthcare, or you can have a durable power of attorney for finances, or both. And that role is someone who you've authorized to act on your behalf while you're still alive. When you die, those powers, durable powers of attorney, terminate. Boom, they're done. That's it, by law. And then your will takes over. Because you don't need a power of attorney for healthcare when you're dead, right? Right, that makes sense to everybody. But you do need a will because you still got stuff. The third fiduciary duty is a trustee. A trustee is a person who manages money and assets on behalf of another person whom we call a beneficiary. Okay, so usually, generally speaking, the beneficiary is alive. That's, or else you have nobody to manage money for, and you can have a trust and appoint a trustee to manage money and distribute money on behalf of a third party called a beneficiary. There are 2 kinds of trusts commonly. There's actually hundreds of different kinds of trusts, but there's 2 really big categories of trust. One of them is something we call a living trust. And that's a trust that you create while you're alive, living trust, hence living trust, while you're alive, and you can use that trust to hold your assets for you and administer them on your behalf as you're the beneficiary. Frequently, if you do a living trust, you're the person who created the trust, you're acting as a trustee, and you're acting as the beneficiary. Living trusts are generally something that can act sort of instead of a will. They're sort of a will substitute, we call them. And the reason people use living trusts mostly, the biggest reason for a living trust, is because you want to avoid probate. Because probate, in some instances, can be a difficult process. I will tell you, though, in Washington state, you do not need a living trust to avoid probate. There are some other reasons for having living trusts. Not going to get into those today, but you don't need a living trust to avoid probate in Washington, because probate in Washington is a very streamlined, straightforward, relatively easy process to go through. In fact, for someone like me, who acts like a personal representative in some cases and a trustee of a living trust in other cases, it's the same amount of work and the same amount of time. So be very cautious if someone tries to tell you you need a living trust to avoid probate. You will hear that. You'll see ads in the Sunday paper saying, come down and I'm free hot dogs. You know, attorney so-and-so is going to talk about living trusts and all this kind of stuff, and you need one of these things. I suggest you approach that with some scrutiny, because for the most part, you don't need a living trust. The second kind of a trust is a testamentary trust. That's a trust that's created under your last will and testament. And we usually use those, sometimes they're used for tax reasons. So if you have an estate that's over $3 million, you may need it for tax reasons. But the most common reason to use a testamentary trust is because you want to control how your beneficiary gets their money. So for instance, let's say you're going to leave your money to a relative who's 10 years old. You want to create a fund so this person can go to college or do something like that, but you got a young person who's too young to handle the money. So instead of giving them the money from your estate when you die, you put it into a trust that's created under your will. You appoint a trustee, and that trustee can administer and manage that trust on behalf of that young person. Okay? Two kinds of trust: living trust, otherwise a will substitute, and a testamentary trust, usually to manage money that a young beneficiary or someone who's got who's got a disability, so that they're vulnerable, they can't protect themselves, they can't manage money. That's another reason to have these testamentary trusts. The fourth fiduciary duty that we have that's on this list is the duty of being a guardian or a conservator. Guardian is a guardian is a court-appointed role where the court, a judge, and only a judge can appoint a guardian, appoints a person to manage the healthcare affairs of a third party. Okay, some third party who is incapacitated by law and needs a guardian. A conservator is somebody who's appointed by a judge. Only a judge can appoint a conservator, and the court appoints somebody to help somebody, a third party, with their financial matters because the court has found that person's incapacitated. You may be interested to know that incapacity is a legal decision. It's not a medical decision. Now, in deciding whether or not a person's incapacitated, the court will review medical records to help them make the decision, but a judge decides whether or not you're incapacitated or not. And there's a good reason for that, because if you're found to be incapacitated, you effectively will lose your right to manage your own civil rights. You won't be allowed to rent, to enter into a contract, to rent a house, to access your money, to decide your health care, to marry and divorce, to select you lose those civil rights, those things we all hold pretty dear, right? We all think, I've got this right, don't take it from me. If you're found incapacitated, you lose those civil rights. So that's why it's a legal decision, because of the severe impact of having a guardian or conservator appointed for you. So I will suggest to you, your goal is to never, ever, ever have a guardian or a conservator. You don't want one. In fact, if you end up with one, it's because you screwed something up in your planning. I know this because I act as a guardian and a conservator, and I can tell you, you never ever want me to be your guardian and conservator. You just don't want that. You want to plan in advance to avoid that. And the best way to plan to avoid that is to go ahead and have these durable powers of attorney prepared for you, so you pick somebody who you want to have help you if you need it in your healthcare affairs and your financial affairs. Okay? I'm emphasizing this because this is an important thing to think about. You want to plan and have these powers of attorney prepared for you, and you will use those powers of attorney to pick somebody who would act as your agent for your healthcare and finances, so you have somebody who will provide those services to you and thereby avoid having a court appoint somebody to do those things for you. Yes, Teresa.
Okay, one question I know that a lot of people have is, okay, well, what's the difference in practice between a guardian / conservator or a healthcare power of attorney and a financial power of attorney? Because they are making your powers of attorney are making decisions for you, right? Just like a guardian and a conservator are. So can you tell us how your role differs when you are hired by someone to be a power of attorney versus you are assigned by the courts to be their guardian or conservator?
Absolutely. The main reason is, in a power of attorney arrangement, you're in charge. Nobody's told you you're incapacitated and you don't have your civil rights anymore. You're in charge. So when I'm acting as an agent under a durable power of attorney, you're still in charge. You can fire me anytime you want. Okay? In a guardianship conservatorship, I'm in charge. Actually, more accurately, the court of law, the court that appointed me, is in charge. You can't fire me. I get to do whatever the court tells me to do. Now, it's a little important nuance. In Washington State, the court, the judges, the people who appoint guardians and conservators are the ones who manage guardians and conservators. So really, it's the court who's in charge. The court says, okay, guardian, I'm giving you these powers to act on behalf of this other person. I'm giving you this person's rights to manage on their behalf. And then the court supervises the guardians and conservators on a regular basis. As a guardian and conservator, for instance, I have to report annually to the court on all of my activities. So the court monitors it very carefully. And it should come to your attention that when I tell you I have to report to the court annually about all my activities, that can get kind of expensive. So for instance, where I might, the cost of me acting as your agent under a durable power of attorney when we're just working together and you're in charge are about one-fourth of the cost of me acting as a court-appointed guardian and conservator, whereby not only am I providing services to you, but I'm also reporting to the court and going into the court every year to report what I'm doing on your behalf. So guardians and conservatorships are court-appointed and court-supervised, and you lose your right to manage your own civil rights. Powers of attorney are privately appointed. You do it. You can fire them at any time. You're in charge. You haven't lost your capacity, and you haven't lost any of your civil rights. Does that answer the question, Teresa?
It does. Thank you. I think where things get a little gray is in the case, say, of dementia, right? If you have hired someone or assigned someone to be your POA, and then you have dementia, in order for the POA to go into effect, someone needs to say, a doctor, 2 doctors need to say, Teresa Tam is no longer able to execute her own affairs, therefore the POA steps in. So it seems like it kind of,
so yeah, okay, so let's go
yeah.
into that. The couple things. Um, so uh, the doctor's letter that says, let me approach it this way. There are two kinds of powers of attorney. Basically, with respect to when those powers of attorney become effective. So let's say you go ahead and you sign a power of attorney, okay, authorizing me to be your agent or power of attorney. The and now the question is, when am I allowed to act? As Teresa said, you know, in some instances, I need a letter from your doctor saying that you are incapacitated and no longer able to manage your financial affairs. We call that a springing power of attorney because it doesn't exist until the doctor's letter is written and signed by your doctor, and then it sort of springs into effectiveness. Now, that letter from your doctor, really all that does is authorize your agent under the power of attorney to act on your behalf. It is not the same as being found incapacitated by the court. Completely different thing. It's just a mechanism for making the power of attorney effective. That's it. The other kind of power of attorney you can have is one that's effective immediately upon signing. In my opinion, and if you get these things, and you should talk to your lawyer about this, I'm not your lawyer, I think it's more practical to sign a power of attorney and make it effective immediately. Because someone like me, if you know, someone like us, and if you should, well, bear in mind, you sign a power of attorney, you are handing this person, this agent, the keys to the kingdom, folks. Do not pick your fiduciary lightly. You're telling them, you're authorizing them to go into your bank accounts, you know, you're authorizing them to potentially do bad things on your behalf. So be careful about who you pick. But assuming you're careful about who you pick, it really doesn't, for any practical reason, matter whether you're incapacitated or not. What you want to do is make it fairly easy for that person who you trust to be able to act on your behalf. And an effective immediately power of attorney, I don't have to go to the doctor and get a letter that says you're incapacitated. I can just, and I don't actually, because most of us, as we need assistance, it's not, hey, I'm fine, I'm taking care of all of my stuff, and all of a sudden you fall off an incapacity cliff. You go, I'm fine, then tomorrow I'm not, right? For most of us, it's going to be one kind of, you know, slow kind of, you know, we may need a little, generally speaking, when we engage with people, they just need a little help to start with. And then we meet them where they are and help them a little bit. And then as time goes on, maybe they need a little more, or maybe they need a little more. And generally speaking, these powers of attorney last through end of life, okay? All the way through. So for most of our clients, you know, at some point in time, we're going to be pretty involved in their care or their managing their finances. We may be assisting them in all of their activities of daily living, but it's for the most part a gradual progression, not a cliff. And as an aside, I don't know about you guys, but I never ever want my doctor to sign a letter that says I don't have capacity. Do you? I don't. I don't want that letter. I never want to see that letter. I don't want my doctor to do it. I'm quite fine, thank you very much, working on my own, you know, figuring it out on my own and not having to involve my doctor. Yeah, Carol.
Yeah, and I had to give this a lot of thought too, because and legalese, I will tell you, is really hard to interpret when you don't know the law. So when I'm reading these things, I'm going, you say this and it's actually 180. It's something I didn't think of. But I was concerned, and I didn't do springing, because I was concerned, what if I fell and I'm just incapacitated for a month? I went into a coma, or I just happened to go in the ER and I passed out, and somebody needs to make a decision. And I had to pick someone that I trust, and we don't have to get the letter, and we don't have to worry about those things. But
So Carol, that's a very good point. Sometimes our need for help is transitory. I mean, let's say this is kind of an example that comes up quite a bit. Let's say you have a stroke. Okay, you have a stroke, and for a couple of months, you really can't do anything while you're recovering. But then, hopefully, after a couple of months of rehabilitation, you're back on the, you're in gear, you're ready to go. I can do everything myself. It's nice to be able to work with a power of attorney who covers things for you while you can't, and then saying, hey, great, you're back. I'm backing off now. Here's everything. You take care of everything. So it's much easier to work temporarily. I have, and here's another thing that comes up. I have some clients who like to travel, and they have saved up, and now they're free to travel or do something, and they'll say to me, Mark, I'm going traveling. I'm going to be gone for 2 months. I'm psyched. I'm looking forward to it. And the last thing I want is to worry about my bills, and I don't want to come back to a stack of mail. So what I'm doing is I'm going to put some money in your working account, and I'm going to have my mail forwarded to you. I want you to pay my bills and go through my mail and stack up my first class mail and do an accounting for me of what I've put in your account and what I've got left over. So when I come back, I don't have to worry about any of that. So we just do that for them while they're gone, and when they come back, it's like, here you go, you get it all back again. And those kinds of temporary assistance factors are really work really well when you have a power of attorney that's effective immediately.
yeah, I mean, who wants to pay for their Netflix account if you're going to be gone for 6 months?
Yeah, and here's kind of another little thing, and I don't take this the wrong way, folks, but if you think about, well, I want my doctor to sign the letter because I'm nervous that this person might take advantage of me. If you're nervous about this person taking advantage of you, you picked the wrong person. Let's just start with that, first of all. But the other thing is, if that person's going to take advantage of you, when is it easier for them to take advantage of you? When they shouldn't, and you fully have the capacity to tell them, wait, what are you doing? You're messing around with my stuff. You're fired. Or is it easier for them to do it when you're incapacitated? Guess what? It's a lot easier to do it when you can't figure out what they're doing. So you're really, if you think about it, you're not protecting yourself from exploitation or neglect or bad actors if they're under a springy power of attorney. The best way to protect yourself against that is to pick the right person. And that may be a family member, that may be a friend, that may be a professional. We're going to talk a little bit about how, what to look for in professionals, but essentially, that's an important thing to think about. So we've just spent a lot of time on guardianships and conservatorships and powers of attorney. I might move on here a little bit. Everybody crystal clear on what I'm talking about? Don't be afraid. All right.
I
Thumbs
have a
up.
question. You may have, I'm sorry I was late, but one of the things in your advanced directives, is it helpful to name a possible conservator in your advanced directives as opposed to a court deciding it if it should come to that in your life?
So I'm going to I'm going to start by, excellent question. I'm going to start a little bit by going into a little bit of terminology, okay? When I hear advanced directive, sometimes thought of as a healthcare directive, an advanced directive, that, generally speaking, in Washington, means a document which expresses your wishes with respect to how you want to be cared for when you're terminally ill and likely going to perish from that terminal illness. So, for instance, you're saying, I want artificial hydration nutrition. I don't want artificial hydration nutrition, right? These, I want you to treat secondary conditions, yes or no. I want pain medication, yes or no, right? And the goal of the law that passed, the law that's passed way back in the 70s, actually, that authorizes advanced directives is to give us control over end of life. how we want to be treated. Generally speaking, it comes under, it's called the Natural Death Act. The idea being that most people want to be able to die naturally. We don't want to be kept alive by machines. That's generally it. That's what we think of as an advance directive or a healthcare directive. Now, whereas a durable power of attorney for healthcare authorizes someone to make healthcare decisions on your behalf, and that person is very definitely obligated, they have a fiduciary duty to comply with your advance directive, your healthcare directive. Because that healthcare directive is, generally speaking, a very clear expression of your wishes. And a fiduciary has to act in your best interest and act in accordance with your wishes. So most estate plans will, that will include a will, a durable powers of attorney, and a healthcare directive. And if you're hiring a lawyer to do your estate plan, you should be getting those 3 documents: will, durable powers of attorney, well, 2 durable powers of attorney, one for healthcare, one for finances, and a healthcare directive. Now, your durable power of attorney. So coming back to, I think, was it Catherine's question? Coming back to that, in that durable power of attorney, it often, one of the paragraphs, it's like towards the end of the power of attorney, will say, we'll have something like, if I need a guardian for any reason, or if I need a conservator for any reason, I want the court to appoint the person who I nominated as my agent under this power of attorney, if appropriate. That nomination, when you're telling the court, if I need one of these things, and heaven, I hope I don't need one, but if I do, I want you to appoint this person I selected. The court is going to honor that nomination unless the court finds good cause for not doing so. So the answer to your question is yes, Catherine, you definitely want to nominate that person, and you would make that nomination in the durable power of attorney. The healthcare directive, as it stands sort of in its own place, it generally speaking does not by itself nominate your healthcare agent. Although you'll see out there some forms which combine the two, the advanced directive and that durable power of attorney for healthcare. In some cases, you're going to see this form that seems to have both of them included in it. But mostly, especially if you work with a lawyer, they're going to have those documents as 2 separate documents. Yes,
Thank you.
And then my I kind of looked at it as there's a little bit of a hierarchy on who's gonna scan and do these legal points, which would be your durable power of attorney, a little bit of overlap in the, the healthcare directive. And then I was told if you wanted things that, I want to hear Beethoven's music, or if I'm in a coma, or I want my baby blue blanket or something, could be in a letter of wishes.
So you can, here's one of the things you want is you want your wishes to be clear, right? And so following kind of traditional documents, the way they're written is the best way to be really clear. So let the healthcare directive or advanced directive do its thing, the power of attorney do its thing, the will do its thing. If you have some personal wishes that are important to you, it is generally speaking a pretty good idea to put those in a separate document and make sure your fiduciary has a copy of it. Your fiduciaries, if you pick the right person, they're going to honor that. So people do that with me all the time. They'll do their official documents, and then they'll send me an expression of their, some more personal stuff about what they would like, how they would like to those final moments to go. Separate document. The one thing to be kind of careful about when you're doing that is just make sure you don't write something in that document of wishes that contradicts something you've put in your power of attorney. Make sure I can read those things and I can read them together and not be twisted around into a knot trying to figure out what it is you want me to do. Because the fiduciaries, my job is to act on your behalf in your best interest. So you don't want me trying to make stuff up or figure it out. So we exercise, when we're administering these kinds of documents, we exercise what we call substituted decision-making authority. And substituted decision-making authority, what that means is when I make decisions on your behalf, I'm supposed to make the decisions you would make for you if you could. So I have to learn about you and get to know you and talk to your people and talk to your doctor and get to familiar enough with you so that when I'm asked to make a decision on your behalf, I'm making the decision you would make for you, not that I would make for me. It's what you would make for you, even if it's a dumb decision, because I'm not the judge, jury, and executioner of your wishes. Your decisions are your decisions. I'm not there to evaluate them. I'm there to execute them. And so I want to figure out what you would do in that instance. For instance, your decision in certain circumstances may be to withhold medical care. I may be like, hey, for me, I definitely give it to me, right? I want the medical care, but you don't want it. And so my job is to make the decision to say no, even though I might want it, because it's not about me, it's about you. Okay? Any other questions? Well, I'm on a roll here. I think.
So I just want to clarify in
When do
terms
I
of
got
the
When do I
letter.
got to stop? When do we start?
You have about 20 more minutes.
All right.
The letter of wishes. So I'm working on my advanced directive and I'm trying to be as clear and inclusive as I can be in terms of it. And so I was like putting together some information in terms of, yes, if I'm in this situation, this is the type of food, this is the type of music. I like soft socks on my feet. And I'm going to this level of detail because I'm a solo ager. I don't have a family member who knows this about me.
Mhm.
And so I'm trying to put this information together because, for example, soft socks on my feet really comforts me.
Mhm.
And so that's why I'm going to that level of detail. But it sounds like I should not have that in my advanced directives. It should be a whole separate document. Did I hear that clearly?
Are you doing this yourself, or is a lawyer helping you?
Well, I want to do as much as I can by myself because I want to be clear. And then I plan to go to a lawyer to then talk it through. But if I do all the legwork myself up front, then really considered it, and I want to do that.
Yeah. So what I would do is let the lawyer do the healthcare directive, the advanced directive. The lawyer is going to do that. They have a form. They're just going to spit out a form. You're going to check a few boxes and sign it, which very expressly addresses your wishes with respect to life support. And the form that they use is created under Washington law. Now you can supplement the form and amend it a little bit, but it really needs to be pretty substantially similar to what Washington law says you can put in these forms. So for instance, if you were to put into that form, if I get dementia, I want you to come up behind me and hit me in the head with a baseball bat and end it all, right? Right? That is not enforceable in Washington. As much as it may make sense to some of us, that is not okay. You cannot put that in your form. Now you can put how you wish to be dressed and the music and the surroundings and what you like around you, you can. But my recommendation would be, and your lawyer will probably echo this, is to keep the form, the healthcare directive, pretty close to what the statute says, and then separately do this wishes document. Now, the fact that you're doing this, Catherine, is wonderful, because you should bring it to your lawyer and say, I want this included with my estate planning documents, and then your lawyer will make sure that they're part of your file. So whoever is looking at your estate planning documents, whoever is working with you at that stage of your life has a copy of it. So your real goal is to make sure they have a copy of it, because someone like me and anybody else who does this for a living, they're going to honor that. Absolutely honor that. Okay. Other questions? Since I'm yeah, Carol, I'm running out of time here, so
Just
I want to
real
get
quick,
to I want to get to these questions here before we lose each other.
just real quick about having your durable power of attorney for finance and for healthcare. And then also you have your executive. But what about
Executor.
executor? Is it good to also put in there that they can be paid for their services?
You don't need to put that in there. They're entitled to get paid whether you put it in there or not. But some people do put that in there. It's fine to put it in there, but you don't need to put it in there to get paid.
Okay.
So some questions that I've had over here. So first one I have is, what do these roles do? How they, so the first question is to really describing the various roles and what they do. I think we've covered that. Yes, pretty well. I'm going to say, yeah. How does a professional fiduciary handle this role versus a court-appointed guardian or conservator? We've talked about the person who you appoint acting on your behalf versus a court-appointed guardian or conservator. The differences there. We've gone over that. What questions should you ask when hiring one? So, if you're going to hire a professional fiduciary, you've got a couple different options. And we're just going to talk about a professional fiduciary. So someone like me, Ohana Fiduciary Corporation, I'm a Washington State chartered trust company. We're a highly regulated, we have a public board of directors, we're audited, we're examined on a regular basis. We are a preeminent fiduciary. I have 30 people working for me. We're highly trained and we function by reputation only. We're known by the courts, by the lawyers. Basically, someone like me is going to do what they're supposed to do correctly. We're not going to mess around. So the upside about hiring someone like me, sort of at the top of the heap in terms of professional fiduciaries, is you're going to get someone who's going to do their job. Period. The downside is I'm going to charge you to do what I do. And because I'm so highly regulated, I may be slightly more expensive than some of these other options I'm going to talk about. Okay? So lots of credentials here. Know what we're doing. Do it all the time. Quite good at it. More expensive, a little on the more expensive side. Okay? The second tier commonly are individuals who provide these services. And most of the individuals who I would consider who provide these services also function as certified professional guardians and conservators. So if you think about it, the training and the background and the expertise required to act in these fiduciary roles are very well covered and very nicely covered by people who are trained to be conservators, professional, certified conservators and guardians in Washington. And in order to be a professional conservator or guardian in Washington, you have to take a 1-year class and obtain a certificate of authorization to act. And you are regulated by the Certified Professional Guardianship and Conservatorship Board in what you do. Now you can go, any one of you can sign up. The class is given every year. I'm one of the teachers of the class, actually. I know it pretty well. In fact, I'm teaching the class this Saturday, and you can take that class. It's not free. It costs about $3,000 to get your certificate. It's put on by the University of Washington, and obtain your certificate to be a professional guardian and conservator. Those people will also act as agents. They'll also act as personal representatives and executors. So they can cover very effectively all of these other roles that you need in terms of hiring a professional fiduciary. So if you're not going to hire a trust company like me, because you don't, for whatever reason, I don't care, your next level would be these professional, certified professional guardians and conservators. if they're not a regulated trust company, they don't have all the regulatory stuff. I mean, I'm a bank basically, so I got a lot of stuff going on. You see all these credentials on the walls. You know, it's just a frightening thing I got to do here. But they might be cheaper, and generally speaking, they're going to be very good at what they do. They're going to do the right thing. They know the rules. They know how to take care of you, and particularly, they're going to be pretty good at healthcare. The third tier is any bozo can hang up a signal and say, I'm a professional fiduciary, okay? Okay, right? And they may be cheap, but that is your lowest tier. So the question I would ask if I was hiring somebody is, what are your credentials to act in this role? That's what I'd ask them. Tell me what your credentials are, what your training, what your background, how are you regulated and governed? Who's looking over your shoulder to make sure you do the right thing? And then you may want to ask, how much experience do you have? How long have you been doing this, right? Have you ever been sued by anybody? These are, vet them a little bit. Those are good questions to ask. What capabilities should they have? Well, they should be able to, have a system in place for managing and keeping track of money. And they should have a system in place for managing and keeping track of healthcare. Now, what do we know about healthcare? Well, we know a lot about healthcare, but one of the things we definitely know about healthcare is it doesn't happen between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. It never does. It's going to happen in the middle of the night. It's going to happen on the weekend. It's going to happen on New Year's Day. It's going to happen Christmas Day. You're going to have healthcare issues 24/7 that are occurring for you. So you want to know, how are you going to cover me? You're one person. So someone like me, I've got 3 care managers, I've got employees. So if I'm off there doing something, that makes me unavailable, I got a team of people. We're going to be here 24/7. I guarantee it. We have a 24-hour emergency phone. You can call me. I've been in the emergency room on New Year's Day, Christmas Day, Memorial Day, every holiday you could possibly imagine, lots of Sundays. So you want to know, how are you going to be there for me 24/7? That's a really important question. And that's why that kind of leans in towards the more kind of agency, chartered trust companies kind of thing, because they got staff. As I said, I have 3 full-time care managers here, and me, and I back them up, so I'm always available. Another thing that's nice about having a larger company is when we're making decisions on your behalf, we have a team approach. So this isn't like healthcare according to Mark, right? This is healthcare according to a committee. So we're all sharing ideas and making sure we make the right decision. Pros and cons of a family member or friend versus a professional hired. The most thing is, the pros of using a professional is that they know what they're doing. They're going to be there for you. They are structured to do this work. Now, the downside is we charge for what we do, but we do it correctly. Family members or friends, one of the things to think about is this work we're talking about here can be pretty overwhelming. It's an important job. You care about people. You want to do the right thing. But at the end of the day, folks, it's a job, right? You've got to do stuff. You've got to be there for people. You've got to keep track of money. You've got to pay bills. You got to be on top of it. And it's a job, right? And so you're asking a family member or friend to do the job. Now they may do it for free, but at some point in time, they could burn out. So what I tell people, let's say you've got a friend who's like, you feel really good about this, or a family member, you're like, I really feel good about it. They want to do it. That's everything. Great. Put them in your documents, but do yourself a favor and put someone like me in as the backup, right? Have a safeguard. Say, all right, great. I've appointed my friend to do it. Maybe he or she are going to do it. That's great. But if they fail or cease to serve, I want to make sure I got someone behind them. And someone like me is good for that because I'm going to be here. And if we never serve, I don't care. That's fine. No, not hurting my feelings. I'm happy that your friend's able to do it, but you don't want to run out of people, because if you have these powers of attorney for healthcare and finances, and your person says, I don't want to do this anymore, and they can't do it anymore, and you don't have a backup, guess what? Hello, guardianship conservatorship. You're at risk of being over into that world. So you want a backup. How do you go about hiring one of these people? Interview. The best way to start is, I'm going to assume most of you, and I would encourage you to do this, are going to do your estate planning with the assistance of legal counsel. Ask your lawyer, do you have any recommendations for professional fiduciaries to help me? They will. They will have a recommendation, and hopefully they'll give you 2 or 3 names. And you can interview these 3 people and see what you think about it. But ask your lawyer, ask your professional. Maybe you've got friends who are working with professional fiduciaries and they're happy as can be with them. You can, someone like me and most people who do what I do, we just work by reputation. So, we have referrals from lawyers every day. That's how we get most of our business. We also get referrals from the court when there's a problem, usually. Or we get referrals from your financial manager. So if you got a financial advisor, ask them. They'll know some names too. Did I see a hand up? No. Okay. What firms in Seattle metro area do this? Okay, so there's really only 4 chartered trust companies that do this work in Seattle area, around the Seattle area. Okay. I'm going to give you the names, so have your pencils out. One of them is us, Ohana Fiduciary Corporation. And we're the best, of course. No, just kidding. Don't write that down. Another one who's very similar to us and for whom I have a lot of respect is Guardianship Services of Seattle. Great folks. Full fiduciaries and a chartered trust company. So Guardianship Services of Seattle. You can find them on your computer, just like you can us.
Uh-oh, we just lost him. Looks like his connection was getting cut off. So hopefully he signs back in. There he is.
That's unsettling. I just got the hook, right? Is that the equivalent of getting the hook? All right. So we're Ohana Fiduciary, Ohana, OHANA, Fiduciary Corporation, then Guardianship Services of Seattle. The next one is We Trust. So we, W-E, like you and I, We Trust. They're very good. All women-owned firm, by the way, which is not the case of Ohana, obviously, I suppose. The only thing that We Trust doesn't offer healthcare services, so they won't do healthcare. Guardianship Services of Seattle and us, Ohana, we do healthcare services. We Trust doesn't. They'll do everything else, just not healthcare. The only 2 that actually do healthcare are us and Guardianship Services of Seattle. The next one is Shane, which is SHOEN Fiduciary. Again, they don't do healthcare services, but these are we're all chartered trust companies. The next level of not chartered trust companies, but someone I trust a lot is somebody called, oh crap. I forget. Private Client Fiduciary Corporation. Private Client Fiduciary. Now, they're not a chartered trust company, but they are a certified professional guardianship and conservatorship agency. I know them quite well and tons of respect for them. Even though they're not a chartered trust company, I feel pretty good about them. The other thing, what I'm going to do next here, because I guess we're running out of time here, is if you go and search for Washington Guardians, okay, Guardians in Washington, okay, you're going to get to you will get to a source here, the guardianship. I'm going to show it to you here just a second. You'll get to something called finding a, actually, if you go to your search engine and saying finding a guardian or conservator in Washington, you're going to get this screen right here. This is a list that's put on by the Washington courts. Here, you see Washington courts. And you can search for individuals or agencies that provide, these are all certified professional guardianship agencies. All of these will provide fiduciary services. So for instance, you can see here, just because this is fun, there's us. There's Ohana Fiduciary Corporation. And this lists Ohana, and it lists all the individually certified guardians and conservators at Ohana. And there's me. Now, I run Ohana Fiduciary Corporation, which is a certified professional guardianship agency, but I myself am a certified professional guardian also. So that's why I'm here. But you can see Ohana Fiduciary Corporation. Here's a didn't work. I'll show you just. I'm sure. And there's, remember I mentioned GS Guardianship Services Seattle? There they are. So you can use this portal here to search for professional guardians and conservators. And you can see they list what city, state they are. GSS and us were both in Seattle. And you can find out where they are. And then call them up and interview them. Don't just say, oh, they're there, they're great, we love them, that's fine. Don't do that. You still want to do a little bit of you still want to vet. What to avoid? Frankly, avoid somebody that has no credentials. You want somebody who has demonstrated that somebody is out there watching what they're doing and keeping track of them. You don't have to have a credential to act as a trustee or a personal representative. Just watch out. And I would not hire or seek to appoint your lawyer to do this. They're too expensive, and this is not really what they do. They may be very smart, lovely people, but lawyers aren't great choices for doing this. You want to hire somebody who's a professional fiduciary. So, and again, while I'm a lawyer, I'm a professional fiduciary. I don't privately practice law anymore. The final question I have here in the 1 minute I have left is, how do they work together? How do all these professionals work together? One of the things you can ask these people, and you should expect a positive answer from, is talk to me about your team approach to doing your work. And how do you interact with the other professionals involved in my life? For instance, how do you interact with my doctor? How do you interact with my financial advisor? How do you interact with my CPA? So a good professional fiduciary will look at your structure and fit themselves in to your structure, not tear you out of your structure and force you into theirs. We do a better job and a more thorough job when we fit ourselves into what you've already created, which means working with your financial advisor, working with your CPA, working with your doctor, all that kind of stuff, right? Because they've got they know who they know who you are, right? They know you. B, you picked them, all the better. They're somebody you like, and they're already involved. So I would say, you should expect your professional fiduciary is structured to work with your people. And with that, folks, it's 5:31.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. This was very helpful.
My pleasure.
Greatly
You guys are
appreciate you
great.
being. Yeah. All right. Well, I think with that, we are going to sign off. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mark. And I will share this recording as well with folks after the fact.
Yeah, and you can feel free to give these folks my email address if they have any further questions.
Okay.
They can email me. I'm happy to answer that. Just remind me where we met.
Right.
And so
Okay.
I have some context, and may take me a couple days to get back to you, but I will get back to you. So take care, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Right. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
This was excellent. Thank you.